Welcome back. Now, new regulations by the Department of Health related to the production, sale, as well as the import of cannabis and hemp-based products will have a significant impact on the industry. Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi gazetted the new regulations recently. It was very hush-hush. So let's speak about this a little bit more. Tebogo Tlhopane is the chairman of the Cannabis Trade Association Africa. Tebogo, thank you so much for the time. What was the reason? Why was this done? Do you know any reason as to why?
I think, first of all, thank you for having me at the studio, and hi to the viewers at home. I think the issue here is that everybody is caught by surprise.
Yeah.
We just woke up one day on Friday, on the 7th of March, and this was gazetted. But we also noticed that the signature was actually done in January. So what happened between January and March, we have no idea. But it appears as if nobody was informed, even including the inter-ministerial committee, which is for cannabis and the cannabis master plan, which is led by the current Minister of Trade and Industry, Pak Stau. So none of these things, as we can see, were actually done, or where there's any information that was let out, or any
So we don't know why.
There's no update.
We don't actually know why this was done ultimately. No. Is there a legal basis then to be put forward against the minister in that case?
No, 100%.
Because he hasn't put forward a reason. He's just gazetted it. And now it obviously is creating a lot of fear amongst the cannabis and hemp making community.
100%. Look, Minister, we wrote a letter to the minister to try and understand exactly what had transpired.
Yeah.
But from a legal point of view, it's completely unjustified, unconstitutional in any way you want to look at it. Because you cannot just unilaterally just decide to wide ban on cannabis or hemp product in all the food types. It just makes no sense, and it's a very wide ban, to say the least. So if you look at all the categories, if you're looking at your gummies, you're looking at your food itself, even nutrition. I mean, cannabis is one of the most nutritious, or hemp seed. It's one of the most nutritious grain, and the oldest grain. It's almost 12,000 years old. It predates maize. It predates weed. You know what I mean? If you look at, you want to have a very good protein, clean protein, hemp seed protein are the best.
What about the assertion then that the Cannabis and Private Purposes Act, which was signed into law last year officially, did not actually legalize the trade of cannabis, which is actually still treated as an offense, particularly under the Drug and Drug Trafficking Act? What about that assertion, and how does that play into all of this?
Well, yes, it's true. The Cannabis Master, for Private Purpose Bill is not necessarily, there's no legislation, or at least what we call the meat in the bone, hasn't been done yet. So as far as that concern, just leaves the whole door wide open.
So does that make the sale of marijuana or hemp products illegal then?
No, absolutely. We don't have a legal framework in the country. We don't, completely, we don't have. So
which means that the minister then is right in ensuring then that you gazette this because it's prohibited.
There's a master plan that's been worked on, led by the Department of Trade and Industry.
Yeah.
That master plan is supposed to be the guiding principle of how we're going to move forward. We don't need to have a legislation that's just created using the old 1972 Foodstuff and Cosmetics and Disinfectant Act. It's old, it's outdated. You can't use that law and unilaterally just do that change. And by the way, there is no consultation as well. There should be a public consultation to make that happen.
I can agree with that fully, that consultation ultimately needs to happen. But if we're still agreeing that the act that was signed into law last year is the current legal framework, right, as you've agreed to, then the trade of cannabis is actually illegal, which justifies the minister in saying we prohibit the sale, we prohibit the importation and manufacture. Technically, it's something he didn't have to do, but it was something that was already in law.
Not necessarily.
Help me understand.
Now, remember, cannabis, because of the Private and Purpose Bill, that was Cannabis Private Purpose Bill, that was
meaning that you could grow cannabis at home.
Exactly.
Yes.
But the most important thing about that act, it removes cannabis out of the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act. So that means it's no more an illegal substance. That's first and foremost.
Is that what the Cannabis for Private Purposes Act says?
Exactly, that's what it did. The only thing that...
cannabis is still an offence under the Drug and Drug Trafficking Act?
Yes, if you are then involved into trade.
Okay.
Now let's look at the difference, the two different things. You've got hemp,
yeah,
which is primarily a grain. If you think about it, right? It is a grain. So if you then come up with a law that says, I ban everything else, you're also banning a grain. Now, I want us to separate these two things purely because cannabis is cannabis, hemp is hemp. In a sense that hemp, it's used for various different things. And we've got about over 400 different SMMEs that were given licenses. There's over 1,400 of these companies that have legal licenses to actually farm hemp. What's going to happen with what they're farming with this ban? It's unknown. Because the same companies that are processing are based here. So it means with a stroke of a pen, you just wiped out the economy because of the confusion between what is hemp and what is cannabis. Coming back to cannabis. Cannabis, there's no legal framework of selling cannabis, but there are social clubs, which means that if you and I are involved in a social club, we can grow together and share the product. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that because that is covered by the Constitution of this country, including the Private People's Bill. The Act, it also covers that aspect. So again, the legislation is being created. The master plan is supposed to be the guiding Bible of how this whole thing should work. But it cannot be helped by these kind of actions because these kind of actions just take us backwards.
So what should be done at this point? Because I'm still trying to understand. We have an act that says that you cannot trade.
Correct.
In cannabis and hemp, if I'm correct.
Well, now hemp, in a sense, because at least the usage of what you get out of hemp cannot be used in foodstuff, which is predominantly where it is. Let's talk about nutrition.
So was the initial act incorrect? Was the purposes, private purposes act incorrect then in the fact that it didn't offer a holistic sense of what should have been done to start with?
The politicians and the members of parliament supposed to come up with what, as I call, meat on the bone.
Yes.
To actually say exactly what does that mean then? Yes, we have this act, but we got to be able to at least add information on it to be able to make sense so that there's guidance. But that guidance, as we speak, is led by the minister in the Department of Trade. So it's an overreach by our Minister of Health. It's an overreach to actually, as you can call it, block what is actually happening right now. It makes no sense. It doesn't make sense at all across everywhere. And millions of money have been lost across different sectors, from retail to processors, guys that are sitting with inventory because nobody knows what to do, which based on a law that makes no sense. And
this looks like something that needs to now go back to the drawing board in the sense that you have the small business development minister, which needs to get involved ultimately because licenses have been given to a whole host of these guys.
And the government has actually funded these businesses.
Right, so if they're funded by government and yet they supposedly have broken a law, which under this seems like the Cannabis for Private Purposes Act, which says that you can't actually trade in cannabis and hemp ultimately then, and that cannabis is still considered an offense under the Drug and Drug Trafficking Act. It feels as though nothing here actually speaks to each other.
Yeah, one hand does not speak to the other.
100%.
Basically, yeah.
So further communication ultimately needed.
Let me tell you this. The Department of Health has a seat in the intra-ministerial committee that is driving this cannabis master plan. They have a seat there. All different departments have a seat there. So communications, even them, they didn't know what's going on. Because if they did, we wouldn't have the situation. They would have advised the minister, but hey, we're doing actually something here that's going to fix if there are concerns. And if this is based on emergency, what is the scientific basis of that emergency? What actually transpired? Who got poisoned eating hemp-based product?
Sure.
That is the that's what
reasoning
missing.
Needs to be then brought forward, right?
Absolutely, because you can't just make a law that makes no sense, that wipes out economies and actually have people losing jobs. We are a third world country that's struggling with unemployment. This sunrise economy, as the president has actually recognized, will be able to create those jobs. Already, if you look at the entire value chain of hemp, and if we actually maximize it, you're looking at over 500,000 jobs created in that space alone. So we really got to think differently. and we, stop trying to reinvent something that does not exist. The fact of the matter, the whole world is gravitating and moved forward.
Yeah.
We are still playing catch up as a country.
This is going to be very interesting to kind of get a sense of, and Tebogo, hopefully we can have you on to continue to unpack it as it unravels as well, because it's a very interesting one. Very quickly, it does mean that as of now, though, it is illegal to sell, to distribute, and to ultimately import cannabis products of any kind.
Well, hemp in this case.
Yes.
For this particular gazette, or this piece of legislation that was gazette, correct.
Okay.
But in a sense, from a social club point of view, that I must mention is that you have a social club system that is based on the 2018 ruling by the Constitutional Court, also that is tied to the Private People's Act.
There are so many legislations to this that need to clearly be clarified, actually.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for the time. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more on this. Tebogo Tlhopane is the Biomuti founder as well as chairman of the Cannabis Trade Association Africa.